Well, guys, thank you so much. Ruben, thanks so much for a wonderful introduction. And it's been great driving around, getting to know Ruben and other brothers and sisters on staff in the Los Angeles. In my mind, I keep hearing Greater Coastal, la 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 la. All I can say is it's great to get to know everybody in the LA church. Amen? My name's Tom Newley. As Ruben mentioned, this is my gorgeous wife, Carol. She's going to share a little bit about her family.
Yes, it is so great to be in California. The Hans taking care of us and everybody. And we love California and we love Wisconsin. That's where we're from. We originally we're from Chicago Church. I'm born and raised Chicago, so I appreciate a great city. And then we moved to Detroit Church. And about a year and a half ago, we were asked to lead the Wisconsin Church. And here we are at a hockey game. It's a great sports town, great college town. It's our capital of the state. It's a fun place to live. This is our daughter, Joy. She is a freshman Badger, go Badgers. And she was adopted from China, through Hope. Back in the day, when Hope had an adoption agency. And we really felt called to adopt. So many kids are here without parents. That's what we did. So Joy's from China, Beijing. She's studying computer science and Chinese, and she's just an awesome disciple. She's 18. And this is Luke. Then we adopted from Guatemala. So we are an international family. So I got to learn Chinese and Spanish. Oh, you give me applause. We're in the Spanish house here, I see. It's awesome. Everybody loves Luke. He's 15, great guy. He plays volleyball. He's a freshman in high school. And Tom and Carol, there we are. So yeah, we love, let's not forget Poe. This is Poe the Kung Fu Panda Dragon Warrior. He is my third baby, our third baby. When we moved to Madison, Tom finally said, I think we got to get the kids a dog. So he helped us in our transition, and that is Snow, you guys. Have you heard of this? Snow. It's cold, it's white, and it's fluffy. But that's Poe. He's 7 pounds. He's a Maltese poodle. He's our cutest favorite newly, so we're glad to be here, but it is fun living in the Midwest. But we love California. You guys are really living an amazing God's creation.
Yeah, I keep gushing about the weather. I'm like, oh, wow. We had a foot of snow last week, and it was, we had like a 10-day stretch where the high was 3 degrees. And so anyway, so just I come here and say, oh, I'm actually shocked why everybody's wearing pants.
Yeah, that's so warm.
I mean, we wear shorts when it's 50 degrees out. So, Ruben mentioned Carol and I lead the church in Madison, Wisconsin. We've been in the ministry 21 years. We worked in Chicago for a while, then we were asked to move to Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is part of the Detroit Church of Christ. And then, go Blue. So we were there for 4 years, and then now we're in Madison. In 2004, this brother, Dave Widener, he and I were already close friends. He studied the Bible with me when I first became a Christian. It was a time of turmoil in the church. I just wanted to hang out with my close friend. And he was like, man, we should start a purity group together. And I was like, well, I got an addiction background. I've personally been sober 31 years from drugs and alcohol. They put me in a drug and alcohol rehab when I was 20 as kind of a last-ditch resort because I was looking at 7.5 to 15 years in prison, and somehow it stuck. And so I was like, oh, I got an addiction background, and he was like, oh, I mean, we really got to work on our purity. And so we started a meeting. It was Dave and me, and then 2 other guys. And what the reason we're here now is we just really stayed with it. We started learning things and started overcoming, and then we started seeing other guys overcome, and then we started seeing what really helped lots of people overcome. And just as the years of working at it for years, you just picked up on some insights. And so even today, as we do the lesson, this is a lesson not for my dog. It's a lesson for families.
Yes. And just to add, in Chicago, after Tom and Dave started the purity groups, I started a group for the women, of the wives of the guys who were in the purity group. And that was a great support group. And then from that, we really found, wow, there's some issues also with the codependency that the wives, was starting to come up. And I learned a lot through my own recovery through that group. So I thought I was starting and facilitating for the women, but I really grew so much and learned so much. And then also, and that's where Gap joined one of our groups, but also the women started saying, Carol, we need purity groups too. It is a woman's problem. So then, I couldn't find anyone to lead that group. So I started leading the purity group for women, and that was just a great blessing for the Chicago church. And then we moved to Ann Arbor. We needed one there too. So everywhere, and then in Madison as well. So everywhere we go, like Ruben said, it's really an issue. It's with the teens, campus, singles, marrieds. So just so grateful everyone's here. And just as we started talking about new families, it's so important we as a family of God are on the same page, and we're all willing. Because some of you guys who aren't parents, you're the ones that are going to help our teens, and you're the ones that's going to help our campus. So I'm just so grateful you all are here.
Amen. Amen. Awesome. And so anyway, today's lesson, this first lesson is on families. And so regardless of why you're here, there are going to be some things that I think will be super helpful for you. Appreciate what Carol shared as far as, hey, maybe you're going to be helping people with their kids. But one thing I can say for all parents, no parent would ever think to themselves, gosh, I want my child to be enslaved to sexual sin. Every parent would want their child to be victorious. They would want to see them do well, not only in their lives successfully, but even be morally successful. And but regardless of how sincere you are as a parent, perhaps you may not really know some of the ins and outs of how to help your children be able to live a life of purity. I want to share a story. We moved to Michigan, and I took Carol out for our anniversary. It's going to be this great day. We always get seafood on our anniversary because we went to Maine for our honeymoon. So we go out for seafood, and then I take her out to a state park, and I've been looking at the map, and we're going to go on a 9/10 of a kilometer walk, right? So we're just going to walk through the woods. It's going to be 9/10 of a mile, and then we're going to get back, we're going to get some ice cream, and it's just going to create that great anniversary feel. It's going to be exciting. And so we get going, and then we keep going to the right, and we keep going to the right. And I'm like, it must be just around the corner, or it's going to curve the other way, whatever. But we just kept going and going and going. And when we finally found a sign that told us where we were at, Carol's like, I think we're lost. I'm like, no, we're not lost. I know where we're going. I studied the map. And when we finally, she's like, this seems a whole lot longer than 1 kilometer. Well, we got 2.6 miles away from our starting point, and it happened to be on the diametrically other side of a circle in this long hike. So we made 2.6 miles. Now, because it was only going to be 9/10 of a kilometer, and then we were coming back for ice cream, we didn't have a backpack or any water or anything, and it was hot, and it was a summer day. So then the only way back, either way you go, it's still 2.6 miles. And it turned out to be a 5.5 mile walk, and Carol hurt her hip, like limping. I was like, gosh, it just, as sincere as I was, it did not create the anniversary feel that I was going for. You know what I'm saying? I was like going for the good stuff there. And my point being is that, gosh, you can be sincere as a parent. And you can be, you can think, gosh, I just want the best for my kids. But if you don't have the right map and you don't have some of the key directions, you can end up creating a kind of a weird anniversary experience or a weird parenting experience. So the purpose of this class is really to guide families into the world of sexual purity. If you will, go with me in the Bible to 1 Peter chapter 5, Amen. Verse 8. And it's going to take us to our first point, which is shatter denial. And I would say, as somebody who's been in the purity ministry, actively working to serve men and women in the church for 14 years now, specifically in this area, I would say the denial in the church has come down. So in a lot of ways, but not completely, where people, just even Ruben's willingness to acknowledge, hey, this is a real issue. We all acknowledge it's a real issue. We don't necessarily need to do surveys on the percentages of people who struggle, because we all know that within the church it's a very real issue. But sometimes as a parent, it's hard to get past the idea that my child is doing these things or struggling with these things, And especially as early as kids are being exposed to things now. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 8 and 9, the Bible says, "Be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kinds of sufferings." We can't forget that our enemy is smart, and our enemy is ruthless, that he's looking at our children as someone to devour. He's hoping that our children and their sexual purity is off our radar. Satan wants them to become consumers of pornography. He wants them to become consumers of sexual sin. I have a couple things here I want to read. They're not stats, but they're quotes. First one is from the U.S. Department of Justice. When the government can recognize something's an issue, like usually they're the last ones to recognize, but anyway, it says, "Never before in the history of telecommunications media in the United States has so much indecent and obscene material been so easily accessible by so many minors in so many American homes with so few restrictions." And literally the Department of Justice recognizes that this is an issue in our world. Then there's another one. Research reveals many systemic effects of internet pornography and the undermining an already vulnerable culture to marriage and family. Even more disturbing is the fact that the first internet generations have not reached full maturity, so the upper limits of the impact have yet to be seen. But we see it. I think we see it in just relationship issues in men and women and dating cultures and the things that are going on in the world today. I really believe that's just directly impacted from the high consumption of pornography within our culture by both men and women. Here we go.
And I think just, again, to shatter denial, I think we as moms really have to make sure we're not being in denial. I've heard a few things over the years, things like my kid would never say that when we try to bring up something. Or my kid tells me everything. And
That's not true. Just let you know. That ain't true.
Or my kid would never do that. Or we take the other way. Well, this is just what kids do, and because we don't want to get involved, and to not talk about these things. It's really, really important that we realize, nobody is above anything. I remember one time we had a Super Bowl party, and all the parents, all disciples, all upstairs having a Super Bowl party, all of our kids Kingdom kids growing up together were in the basement. And the basement was like 2 steps down, and it wasn't even like a door. It was just open there. We could kind of see. We literally took turns going down there. I remember saying, "Hey bro, it's your turn to go down there." And we take turns walking through. "Hey kids, how's it going?" Because I was set down there for them, and they're playing games, just being together. We're upstairs watching the Super Bowl. Sure enough, it came out later, they actually were playing Spin the Bottle. Even with us, it's like, it happens, and we're all right there, and we're going down. We're not even leaving them alone for very long at all. And, sure, some person brought it in. Now it's on the phone, you guys. You don't really spin a bottle. It's on the phone. So one person brings it in, but they all co-signed it. So not one kid had the courage to say, "We shouldn't do this, you guys. I'm gonna go get my mom." Nobody thought to say that. So then we had to bring everyone in and a little talk, but not to overreact, but just to know this is what goes on. This is a potential of what goes on, even right under our noses, and we're all very aware of potential. That's why we're down there. But it's still they are sneaky. So I think things to consider that allow for this to thrive is opportunity. And like in their schools, even the kids, our younger kids, we're not giving them a phone because we don't want them to be connected to pornography or anything inappropriate. We do all that we can. They go to school and their friends are like, "Look at this, look at this." Or the computers, our daughter, we were in Chicago, so we're 4th, 5th grade, a new kid came and taught all the kids during computer class how to get onto pornography. And when I called the principal about locks and boundaries on these computers, this is what she said: "We trust the character of these kids." And I'm like, I don't. What? So I'm like, that's that denial. They're good kids, and they are good kids. kids, like parent to them, but they're not. They're together, they're finding things to do inappropriately. And of course, all the gaming devices, the Wii systems, all of those gaming systems, they can stream pornography right through it.
Yeah.
So opportunity and then secrecy. You know, with the phones in their room, I gotta use it for my alarm. You know, phones are right there. There's secrecy, you can quickly turn things off. So just to be aware, so shattering the denial.
Yeah.
Awesome. And without getting into details, we're like the purity people, right? And both of our kids were exposed to things in junior high, all kinds of stuff, and it's like, I was not me. I'm like, I don't know, my pride was like, no, we're the purity people. God's like, yeah, you're the purity people, all right. But they're in a dark world, and Satan is going after your kids. I mean, Satan's aggressively pursuing our children, and he's aggressively pursuing us. But our children have even less judgment to be able to resist and to know what's going on. Let's go ahead and go to point number 2 here. So our challenge is just to be in the world of reality when it comes to this stuff. We're just inundated from all different sides. Point number 2 is
Goes along with denial.
Oh, wait a minute. Hang on here. There we go. Oh, resist him.
There you go.
Although I like this picture better, so we're going to leave that one up there. Point number 2 is resist him. So just having a spirit and an attitude as a parent, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight for my kids' well-being. I may not be able to keep it completely out of their lives, or you certainly, even if you just watch regular TV, there's things that are not pornographic, that are highly explicit, that are like, and you're trying to get the TV off. But it's a spirit as a parent of fighting. That gosh, you know what? We're going to resist this. We're not just going to put up with this. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 9, it's the next verse in the Bible. It says, resist him, meaning the devil, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers and sisters throughout the world are undergoing the same kinds of suffering. So even we in Madison, Wisconsin can come out to Los Angeles and talk to you, and you guys know exactly what we're going through. We can relate. We're all in this battle together. It's a team battle as a church and as a family. I was having a conversation with a really good friend of mine in Detroit, in the Detroit church, and we were talking about just his teen boys. Their boys were a little bit older than my son. And he was like, yeah, what do you do with the technology? We were talking about purity, and I said, well, as a parent, you really got to be on top of that. And he's like, yeah, what do you do? I told my mom, don't buy the kids iPads, but she bought the kids iPads. I said, come on, Mom, stop doing that. And then she bought them iPad minis, and then they got iPad minis, and then they got gaming system. I said, don't get him a phone. She got him a phone, but then you kind of saw his heart come out at the end, where he was just like, what are you going to do? Like, they're going to find this stuff anyway. And what he was doing was he just was tired of the fight, and he didn't want to have the conversations, and he was kind of caving to his circumstances. And I was like, bro, come on, man. Your kid's only shot is you caring. And maybe you don't protect them from everything, but what they see is they see that you're fighting for their spiritual well-being. They see that you're like, hey, no, I don't care if we have iPads. If we're going to have some kind of impure stuff, or if we're going to have devices around here, they're going to be protected. Now, I went to college for computer science 21 years ago. Like, the computer world is totally different now. And trying to put accountability software on stuff is such a pain. It's like one of my least favorite things. Or if my kids ask me for help with their computer, I'm like, no, this is just so painful. But for their spiritual well-being, I'm going to swallow it and I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do the uncomfortable work, and I'm going to ask them questions about what's going on. A couple practicals here is just remind our kids of standards of God and share convictions about why. So sometimes now, for some reason, I can have a better talk with my daughter about these things than my son. My son, I just kind of talk to him, and he really doesn't say a lot, but I talk to him anyway. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm going to plant those seeds anyway about, hey, listen, remember, I know what you're getting exposed to at school. I know what's on TV. God's standards are, but among you there must not be a hint of sexual immorality or impurity. And the reason for that is God knows that if you start doing those things and allow those things to consume you, they'll destroy your relationship with Him. They'll contaminate your ability to be close to God. So even though He doesn't dialogue much back, I make sure that He knows and understands these things. And so we're just now at the age of 15 having dialogue where it's not just one way, it's actually coming back the other way. And I've tried to make it as safe as possible. Oh, son, you can tell me anything. And just if you're a parent and you say, oh, you can tell me anything, they still don't tell you anything. You know what I'm saying? There's a side to them that's like still pretty wise. So anyway, but remind your kids of the standards. Find a way to talk about it. Even if it's uncomfortable, awkward, you don't even know what you're doing, do something and at least let them know of God's standards. I think secondly is just know all the access points in the house. Block them and hold them accountable, computers, whatever. Like my story with my buddy Greg, he did repent and he's got accountability stuff on all the software, all the computers, everything. He said it took him like half a day on Saturday, just blocking all the access points and figuring it out. And what's really awesome is both of his sons, who weren't disciples at the time, are now both disciples. So it really, not that was, it was his engagement that really led to them beginning to grow more spiritually. And then finally, number 3 is if there is sin, confront the sin. And talk about the sin. And I appreciate what Carol was saying. You know, we don't shame the kid. Like if let's say you find something on the computer, you don't like, I can't believe you did that. I mean, this is just wicked and evil. Oh my! I mean, you know, your face is like bulging and you're like losing it. It's like, hey, let's talk about it. What's going on? How did this happen? Yeah. Let's turn this situation into a learning experience. We're going to learn about God. We're going to learn about how this is a very real issue in your life now, and it's going to be a real issue for as long as you live. And your only hope is that you become trained how to live with God in a way where you're victorious. Otherwise, you'll just be snagged into the world like the rest of everybody else is. So that's our challenge. It's not to be passive, but rather resist the evil one. And there he is. Resist him. The next point is stay connected. Now go to Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5. What's that?
Oh. Stay connected.
Now here's a picture of Carol and our daughter Joy. Yes. Now this is in Michigan. Yes, we do graffiti.
We found it.
Actually, somebody else did it, and it just looks like Carol and Joy are vagrants. But part of the gang. They're in a Michigan gang. Anyway, in Ephesians 5, verses 1 and 2, the Bible says, follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice. You know, God's way of rescuing us from a sinful world is not simply just to tell us right from wrong, though he has blessed us by giving us his commands. He rescues us from a sinful world through a relationship. And that we begin to understand that relationship, and we seek that relationship and desire that relationship more than the things of the world. And that's really his plan and his strategy to get us rescued from this world, the darkened world that Reuben prayed about. And but he becomes a father who loves and cares for us in such an amazing way. And that's what we're trying to be as parents. We're trying to be an imitator, even though I admit I'm a pathetic imitator of God, but I'm trying. I'm in there. And I'm trying to live in a way where I have a relationship where there's communication with my children. Amen?
Amen. And to really know that our parent-child connection it can really be fragile. It can be dropped at a moment's notice, like a phone, like a cell phone. You don't know what happens. I think oftentimes it's if we overreact. If we overreact to a situation like, oh, they like someone at school? What? He doesn't go to church? How can you like someone? Oh, you know, we do all that. Then they realize, oh, can't tell mom that. Door is closed. You know, it's fragile relationships, and we really could lose a relationship based on something like that. we have to be really careful with not overreacting. And you gotta remember, I always remember who I was in 7th grade. I remember in 7th grade, our kids are not disciples. There's disciples in training since day one perhaps, but they're not. And they're going to school and they're being pressured into dating and relationships everywhere. The love songs, the Disney channels, all about relationships, it's everywhere. So we just have to really remember that too. Remember where we came from and make sure you can protect your relationships. It also requires regular maintenance. You know, they're under a daily assault from Satan, just like we are. And just making sure it's a dailiness. That's why, like, driving the kids to school is great opportunity. Every day talking to them. Even if your kids can walk, they can take the bus. You know, if you can keep them off the bus, and you can, if you have flexibility, that's great time. And especially with boys, I think, because they don't like the eye to eye, they're more side to side. You know, when my kids were young, it was always coloring. Coloring is where we could do that, and then we could think about serious issues. But just really requiring regular maintenance. And that's why they always say dinner time is so important. We come to dinner and we tell stories. When they were, you know, what happened at school today? Was anyone mean to you? You know, who did you sit with at lunch? You know, we're just asking questions when they're young. When they're in kindergarten, it's like, Jessica threw up on the carpet again today. You know, it's like those stories. But now it's turned into, yeah, this person called me and said she likes me and wants a relationship with me. You know, that's where it's gone. So it's like we put those seeds. So now when the big stuff is here, they're so used to coming to us with everything that they know we're in their corner. And we've also said things like, you know what, we're not going to call the school unless you're okay with that. Because they're afraid if they tell us they're being bullied by Charlie, he kicked me off the chair again, that we're going to call the school and get all emotional. It's going to make it worse for them. Like, we've really learned to say, you know, we're going to talk about this. And there has been times, you know what, I think we need to contact the vice principal. And they were like, okay, Mom. You know, so it's like, but they're in that planning. So it's, again, I'm more worried about them. I don't want them to be open with me than me making the school change something or talk about another kid. I'm way more aware of what my kid is going through than getting justice or something else. Does that make sense? Like, so that's most important, my connection. And yeah, so Joy and I and Luke and I, whatever it is. And so sometimes they would come home and they would even say, you know what, I have something to share. I'll be like, how does school go? Something big, but I'm going to save it for dinner time. And I'm like, okay. Instead of me saying, tell me, because now I'm worried. I'm just like, okay, sounds good. So again, we've created something there at dinner time. We also have something called a family meeting. If any of us are upset with anybody, it's a safe place where, you know, if I come home and, you know, Tom and Luke had a little bump about whatever, you know, Luke will be like, Mom, can we have a family meeting? Sure. And we all get everyone together, everyone comes down, safe place. We just share about our feelings calmly and what happened, and apologies are made and that sort of thing, and some training as well, maybe. So it's just, but it's a safe relational place, and that's so important. And one time, one of our kids didn't want to ride home from school. You know, it's close enough. This is in Ann Arbor. And we're like, oh, okay. And so then I'm driving and I see this child walking slowly with someone of the opposite sex. And they're smiling and walking so slow. And I get home like, Tom, it looks like they were on a date. So I'm like, okay, so we got some advice from our teen leaders. And so then we set up this time. Tom's practicing guitar. This child comes in and we're like, so, how's it going? And so we're just calm. Tom's like, and then we're like, so, do you like anyone at school? And then, you know, and then it's like, well, yeah, sort of. And then I'm like, so then I remember I said, oh, do they go to church? And this child's like, no, they're atheists. And I'm like, watch your face, watch your face. Atheists. You know, we were trained to be calm, just ask questions. What do you like about them? And that was so helpful, you know, instead of us going, you can't, like, he doesn't even go to church, like, you know, so it's like, we just stayed calm. It was good, it was really good. So knowing that we want these conversations to happen and for us to deny our feelings and our thoughts in the moment to protect that relationship.
That was a true story. I was playing guitar.
I was trying not to say which child.
No, I think just to, so practically what does this mean? You know, being a disciple is implied. Like as a parent, you're trying to stay connected. Essentially, your convictions get transferred through your connection with your children. How does that apply to pornography?